Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. Welcome back to the Retro Wrestling Room. We have a very special guest on the channel today. It is somebody who got me into British wrestling for that first time. You know, obviously I was a big fan of the US scene when I was a kid growing up. Then I was a big fan of the US Indies, but I'd never really dived deep into the UK scene. And after seeing the show, there was one man that I could not stop thinking about how good they were in the ring. And that is the person that we have on the show today. We have the former FWA and IPW champion, a former NXT tag team champion. You may know him as Danny Burch or Martin Stone. We have Danny Briggs on the show today. How's it going, man?
I am absolutely tremendous. Thank you for that exceptional introduction there. I'm glad I was able to hook you in and reel you in and get you watching British wrestling. That's really good, mate.
Definitely. We will get onto that in a moment. One of the first things I want to throw out, the last couple of years you've been doing really well with CCW, Coastal Championship Wrestling, and I think it's fair to say that it kind of you'd gone through a bit of not well, yeah, I guess it was a bit of a hard time for you because you'd
It was
suffered a
awful.
lot of injuries, you'd left WWE, and this kind of rekindled your love for pro wrestling. Um, how much do you credit that to, the CCW locker room and things like that?
So I've this is part of the reason why I tended to shy away from doing podcasts because I never wanted it to be a woe is me sob story
No, of course.
or anything like that. But I'll throw this out there now. I talk about it now because I don't want people to um, make the mistakes that I made, and also, uh, you know, say the stupid stuff that I did online, and also to understand that yes, this is for the people that aspire to get to TV. Yes, this is our dream. This is our goal. This is everything you want to be able to do. But this is also what not to do if you do get let go.
Hmm.
So obviously 2021 was when I first injured my shoulder, and it was a fluke accident. Well, not fluke, absolutely freak accident. The tag match with Karrion Cross and Finn Balor, and all it was, Cross. The move I have taken. I can't even. I couldn't even give a number the amount of times I've taken this move myself, and only was taking a double suplex. As you went over, my hand slipped off of his thigh and I landed on my shoulder. First, me across back head while I finished of the second set with a place full of. And be good, yeah. And I like my shoulder, big way, and looking and then obviously, it was a grade 6 section, and it requires surgery. You got little, there's like a grade 1, which is, you got that weird collarbone thing sticking out, but you don't have to surgery. Unfortunately, I had to have, I had to surgery in that. Pretty lucky, and this, when it separated, I had no lengthy process. So this was 6 months, 5, 6 months. Surgery was a great success. Rehab was really good. And then I came back to the ring for the final show that would be the black and gold brand of, and it features myself on underneath. Excuse me, this is my dog Haiti. He's going to sit here and whine. He's going to sit here and whine and complain if I don't pay him while we're talking.
That's okay, no problem. We say this
Yeah, so
every.
it was the final. It was the, and it was a that was a sad day because obviously we knew what direction everything was going to go in. Hunter had his heart complications and stuff like that, so he was out of which was a scary time for all of us. Especially because I'd had many a conversation with Hunter, and I owe Hunter and Mr. Regal a lot for what they did for me. Um, and obviously John Laurinaitis was taking over. Now, John Laurinaitis was the head of developmental talent when I first signed with WWE back in 2011, 2012. but obviously it was known as FCW, Florida Championship Wrestling. So I knew Johnny. But this being the last episode, it was myself and only against MSK, I think they were called. They've got so many different initials and hand signs and whatever they do. But it was that Wentz and yes, and the match was great. I was really worried about it. There's like a break-in period of 4 to 6 weeks if you do a few live events, and you get your ring shape back up, and then they bring you back on the TV. But yeah, I got cleared on the Friday, and they're like, "Oh, your main event in Tuesday night." I'm like, "Huh?"
Yeah.
So I was like, "Oh, well, okay." And one of the biggest compliments I got that night was I came to the back, and Sean had said, he was like, "Danny," was like, "You ain't missed a beat." I was like, "Okay." So that was good. So then obviously it was turning to NXT 2.0,
Yeah.
which was going to be more colorful, and because obviously at that point in time we'd pretty much come out of COVID, so obviously there was no masks anymore. All the vaccinations were out and stuff like that, and everyone was trying to get back to normality. So we were told, hey, it's going to be colorful, it's going to be this, it's going to be that. And obviously, when we saw when they changed the inside of the performance center and stuff for the TV set, it was FCW 2.0. So
Right.
very, very clear what was going to happen, and obviously it was very clear with the booking of the first show exactly what was going to happen with the talent. The performance center, they do something called PC Live, which is where the less experienced guys get a chance to work with guys that have been around for a bit, and it's also a chance for the coaches and the office to look at the guys and see how they're progressing and stuff like that. So they're just, they're 10-minute matches. There's no crowd, so it's kind of shitty for that reason, but it's triple threats. And at that point in time with COVID, there was, we were still coming out of COVID. They hadn't done any live events at all, and as I will say to everyone, you can spend as much time in the gym training and running drills and everything like that. Nothing in wrestling will beat live crowd experience. I don't care if you've got a match together with your friend that's 2 pages long. You don't know if it's going to work in front of a crowd. You don't know what you're doing. You don't know if it's going to work or not. The crowd will give you instant feedback. So anyway, so it was a real simple match. I'm not going to throw him under the bus and say who, but in that match, I ended up getting my collarbone broken on the same side that I'd had the previous surgery done.
Right.
So simple, real simple procedure. Just collarbone, we'll put in a metal plate. You'll be good in 8 weeks. So I was like, okay, not the end of the world, but okay. In that time, we had been told that it was going to be myself and only with Imperium, because obviously once I had my shoulder, once I had the injury and it was announced, they shipped us with the tag titles, which was, for me, was pretty annoying because at the time it was me, Ridge, Oni, and Pete, and I'm sure creatively they could have come up with a way to do like the Freebird rule where, just something different, but
Yeah.
it is what it is. They didn't do that, it is what it is. So we've been told that we were going to be going into a feud with Imperium. We were going to win back the tag titles as baby faces, and we were going to start again. Okay, great. Anyway, so then I got my collarbone broken. So then maybe a week after it's all done, we open up the wound and stuff, or not the wound, but we open up like the procedure and everything like that. Just had a little check and a clean up, and it was super infected. As they pulled the thing back, like pus just flew out all over that poor nurse's face. And obviously the surgeon's like, okay, so if we don't get this done in 24 hours, then it's you're gonna get sepsis. So we need to get this cleaned out and taken care of straight away. And I was like, okay, so back in we go. So this is the third shoulder procedure inside of a year. So it gets fixed. Everything's great. I go back for the checkup after, and then they tell me that the original procedure has been compromised. So they had to go back in again.
Right.
Basically reattach what had kind of come loose the first time,
Yeah.
and then we'll be good. So we did that, and then everything was great. It was just one of those. Okay, just recovery's going to be a little bit longer now. You got to sit and wait. During that time, I got told I was too old for television, and I would be a coach, which is hilarious because most of the main roster are a lot older than me. Yeah. Whose ever opinion that was, no problem at all. It was like, well, not the greatest thing in the world, but okay, it is what it is. So that was what? That was the September, October time. And then, yeah, January, I get trying to think of the day. It was the day that when they let go of a lot of people.
Yeah.
And we can read between the lines, but all the people that were there that were let go that day were the last remaining guys that were hired by Hunter. That's all I'm going to say about that.
Yes.
So there it was. I had no clearance date, so I had no idea when I was going to be cleared. There was speculation and a guess it would be April. So I had no clearance date officially. I couldn't work a regular job. I obviously couldn't wrestle, so I was in complete limbo. And unfortunately, I turned to try and get myself through it, and it was the worst choice I could have ever made. There's a lot of apologies I still owe people. One of them specifically to Cara Noir. I was in a real bad place and very frustrated with everything like that, and just it wasn't. That was a few years after, but I was still, I was still pretty bad at that point in time. So, it's not. It definitely wasn't my finest hour. And I do say to everyone, if it could have been a worse problem, and if it hadn't have been for my wife now, December 2022, I would have made a very, very, very bad mistake. And we wouldn't be having this conversation right now.
Yeah.
So if anyone is ever that low or that desperate or anything, please reach out. Because if I didn't pick up the phone, then it wouldn't be good. Yeah. So, yeah, just to absolutely put this on a downer now, but I'm kidding. Just, you know what I mean? It was just, it's a part of my story that I don't shy away from because, excuse my language, I fucked up royally. I really did. And I don't want people to make the same mistake that I did. Yeah. So then, to top all of that off, while going through all of that, in the April when I go back to see the surgeon, he tells me that my collarbone is not healing. So then I had to go in for a final procedure, which was taking a piece of my hip bone out to put it in my collarbone so that the bone would finally set and heal. And, it's called a bone graft. So, yeah, within inside of a year, I ended up with 5 shoulder surgeries. Miraculously, how this arm is completely 100% fully functional, I have no idea. I can only thank my surgeon for everything he did. He was very, very patient, and with a lot of stuff that went on, the finger was kind of pointed at him for it being wrong when it wasn't. They were just, it was a rough time. It was a really rough time. But then, I officially got cleared December 12th. December 12th. So I officially it was sometime in December I got cleared in 2022. And then I had my first match back for CCW in 2023. And, for most of 2022, I went through hating wrestling. I absolutely hated it. Because technically now that was twice that place had taken my passion away from me. Yeah. And I kind of felt exceptionally stupid for going back. I was sitting there many a day, if I got time to clock back, I never would have signed, but we live and learn. So it was what it was. But yeah, so I mean, it's been what, well, are we 2025? Yes, it's been what, 3 years since there was a few hiccups. Even getting cleared, I was still in a very very bad state, still in a depressed state, still what am I going to do? What am I going to do? What am I going to do? Still hitting the bottle, and it was bad, and blamed everyone else for my shortcomings and stuff like that, and that's when I put out some really pretty offensive tweets to people online. So I can only apologise. They'll either accept my apology or they won't. There's it sucks. I was stupid. I'm not going to say well, I wasn't of right mind. No excuse. No excuse at all. But we're here now, and I'm in a completely different headspace, much better headspace. I have an amazing wife, have an amazing dog who made his presence felt earlier, and yeah, like life is fun, wrestling's great again. So yeah, I randomly went to a CCW show with a friend, and everyone was exceptionally nice to me and just wanted to pick my brain and everything like that. And then when the promoter realised who I was, he was like, "When you cleared?" And so I let him know when I was cleared, and yeah, that's been my base promotion since.
Like, thank you so much for the honest and open answer there as well. Going into that whole dark side, that we all kind of go through. We all have different problems in our lives. Whether it's in the wrestling business or outside the wrestling business. And we all make mistakes when we're trying to deal with these certain things. So thank you so much for telling that side of the story as well. There, when you were a kid, say first getting into professional wrestling, what are some of your like really early memories?
Really early memories. Okay, so my cousin pretty much raised me from
Mm.
uh, he was he was my everything. Funny enough, he literally just came to visit, which is the first time I'd seen him since 2019 when
Right.
I was still under contract and I did that show for Progress. That was the last time I
Ah,
saw
okay.
him. So always kept in touch, obviously, but just it was the last time I'd seen him. My earliest memories of wrestling is being on my nan's settee with Jamie watching on a Saturday afternoon. It was always, this is like when Sky TV first came out.
Yep.
That's how old I am.
Yep.
So
I,
it
I
was
I'm the
always,
same,
there was
roughly the
always,
same age.
yeah, there was always so I think from about 10 in the morning, you had NWA before we
Mhm.
started getting WCW. Then it would be Wrestling Challenge and then Wrestling Superstars.
Yep.
And my earliest memories are Ultimate Warrior, Texas Tornado, Hulk Hogan, Boss Man, Undertaker. All the the when the boom period really started for American wrestling over here was when obviously all of that came on. And just yeah, just from that day, it was from that day forward. I'm always watching wrestling. Um, and then I'm trying to think. I kind of stopped watching around WrestleMania 9. I kind of fell
Yes.
out of it a little bit. So, I missed all the. I say, I mean, because you go back and watch it now. Like you go back and watch like 94, 95, 96. You watch all those in your houses, and those matches are absolutely phenomenal.
Yeah.
They really, really are. I go back and watch that all the time now.
Mm.
So I missed the birth of 316 and stuff like that. So I missed all of that with stuff. But then I got back into it in early 2000,
Mm.
and uh, if this causes any trigger problems for people, I do apologize saying his name. I watched Chris Benoit versus Diego Guerrero on Raw when the Radicals split, which was around I think it was like late 2000 when it happened, maybe
Yeah.
mid 2000.
I think that sounds right.
And that was the match. And Chris Benoit was the wrestler that made me actually think, wait, why does everyone else look different except
Mm.
he looks, wow. That was the match that made me want to become a professional wrestler. Um, and then yeah, I found Dropkicks Wrestling Academy in Purfleet, and yeah, 22 years later, nearly 23, here we are.
Like, ironically though, like, Benoit was obviously influenced by a lot of the British style. It's, of the comparisons are always thrown out with him and Dynamite Kid, obviously.
Yep,
Like, I always remember him talking about Rollerball Rocco and people like that.
yep.
That was his kind of favorite scene, and I know you kind of share some of the same influences as
Yes.
well.
Yes. So once I then started training,
Mm.
I was literally just trying to be like the little clone of, of Benoit. And then obviously it gets to a point when you're like, okay, I need to broaden my horizons a bit. So then that was when, I started getting as many old British tapes as I could,
Yep.
from like guys that I was training with, and we'd obviously share tapes and everything like that. And then we get tapes off of our coaches and stuff. And then, yeah, that was when I discovered Rollerball Rocco, Marty Jones, watching some of Dynamite's really early stuff. And then honestly, probably the biggest influence on my style, as much as it was Benoit, was Fit Finley.
Mm.
Fit is hands down one of it, if not the best to ever lace a pair of boots up. Just his believability, down to how he carries himself, down to the simplest little things that Fit does. Just he's absolutely amazing. So to get the chance to actually work him, and then to get the chance to be at the performance center with him was, one of those moments when I'm like, for real? Is this
Yeah.
really happening to me?
Yeah.
Because I mean, I'm when I look at, yes, my career didn't pan out how I wanted it to. Especially like, well, I say that wrong. My time in WWE didn't pan out how I wanted it to. But I do look back on some of those moments and just say, I'm just a kid from London that, I I I aimed for the stars and I ended up landing in the trees. So as much as at times I look back and I do think, oh man, what if? But I'm also like, it was pretty cool.
Like, you obviously started on that UK indie scene, and there was places like
Yep.
FWA, 1PW. We got some early clips here as well.
Oh
I think this
God.
some of these are roughly around 2004,
Le-
2006, something around that time.
This is between 2000, between two. So yeah, Iceman was 2000. Yeah, this is from like 2004 onwards.
Mm.
Um, that SWA there was 2007.
Hmm.
Um, oh wow, me and Scorpio. Wow, you found some really good stuff.
But like, looking back at some of these clips, like, how much of, say, this version of yourself do you still see in some of the work you do now, or is it like watching somebody completely different?
Uh, I mean, my moveset hasn't really changed much. But honestly, I mean, wrestling's not about moves. Not about moves at all. I always say to people, Austin had 3 moves, The Rock had 3 moves,
Yeah.
Hunter had maybe 4, Sean had what? The flying forearm, the nip up, the super
Yeah.
kick, and the elbow drop off the top rope. It's not about moves. So if I was to watch those whole matches back, I'm sure I would be cringing and wanting to throw my boots in the rubbish bin.
Yeah.
Um, I think I always kept true to myself, and I never forgot where I come from. It was never a case of, oh, okay, well, I'm wrestling here now, so I'm going to completely change what I am. Because at the end of the day, I got signed on what I brought to the table. Um, the main difference, I think, was just I got in tremendous shape. Um, that was the only thing that really changed.
Mm.
But in terms of just style, it was a case of when I broke in, obviously I trained at drop kicks. I also had the privilege of training with Dave Taylor and William Regal
Yeah.
in Georgia. And their advice was always, right, Doesn't matter what the show is. It doesn't matter where it is. It doesn't matter how many people are in the crowd. It doesn't matter how much you get paid. You need to be in front of a crowd to get better. You need to figure out what works and what doesn't. And from 2006 onwards, I was working as much as I could. I was working on the docks, driving a forklift from
Right.
6 till 4. I was wrestling. I was doing that Monday to Friday. I was wrestling most Wednesdays for All Star. I'll be wrestling some Tuesdays in All Star, and then obviously I was away every single weekend. So you can't beat live experience. It's just to me, I know the business has completely evolved now. I saw a lot of that in NXT when, especially when I was the coach, it's like, okay, we have to lay this match out for them, point A to B. And to me, that's not wrestling. Um,
Right.
but hear me out. Our job as a wrestler is to get the fans. Our job as wrestlers is to invoke a reaction from the fans. So if wrestler A and B have put a match together on paper and it has done exactly that, and everyone's jumping out of their seats, cheering, screaming, laughing, crying, doing whatever they're supposed to do, that's our job. So who am I to say that doesn't work? Just different trains of thought. Wrestling is subjective. Just because what I feel and what I do in the ring doesn't mean I'm right, doesn't mean I'm wrong. If someone else can put together a match in 20 minutes and they met, great, absolutely great. Our job is to entertain the fans. It doesn't matter how that gets done as long as that gets done. That at the end of the day is what we do. Um, so again, backtracking. I always stay true to myself and just I was never a flashy guy. I always my whole goal getting into wrestling was just the reaction I had to when I would watch Fit and when I would watch Benoit and Eddie and stuff like that. I would always wonder, is that real? Is that as long as I had one person walk out and say, yeah, that card was great, but there's something different about Stone. I don't know. I just wanted to be the most believable I could and to suspend people's belief for 12, 15, 20 minutes, however long I was in there for, just so that when you see a really good magician and you're like, no way.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it makes you wonder. Like, I just wanted to invoke that reaction from one person. And I feel that I do feel that I did that because I'm still going. I'm not the greatest wrestler in the world. I don't do anything, there's not you can't put me on a highlight reel, because it's, oh, well, he's just. But I feel that my style and my believability and my credibility has kept me around because it's something different. So
One of those people that you did definitely impress when they saw you was myself, which I mentioned at the top of the podcast. I remember me and my wife now, who we weren't married obviously at that point. We were just a younger couple. First started going out. We went to the London Expo, and it was the revamped FWA shows that they used to have there at the same time.
wow, yeah, that was
So
the oh, what was the group? Was it not the Ascension?
the agenda.
Was it this? That's it, the Agenda. Yeah, I had a
And
lot of fun with that. I
yeah,
had a lot of fun with that.
we were there and we saw this group, the agenda, come through the curtain, and instantly, we were just like, "Oh, wrestling! Let's go!" Let's, 'cause we were big fans anyway. So we went over and we checked this out. And then, as soon as I saw one of your matches, I was actually hooked. We've got some clips from
Thank
that
you.
time, the second run of FWA. I think that match may have actually been the one with Leroy Kincaid there. Um, what are some of your memories of that second? Because it was the revamped version of FWA at that point.
Yeah. So I did. I was fortunate that I did actually get to work FWA the first time around.
Mhm.
That was where the name Martin Stone came from because they teamed me with Sticks and they went, yeah, we're going to call you Sticks and Stones. And I was like,
Oh wow! I never knew that.
Okay, I guess so. You know, it was the worst. I thought it was the worst name in the world. But it stuck. You know, Martin Stone. It stuck. It stuck for years. So we won the tag titles at the Morecambe Dome against, I can't remember the name of the team, but it was Andy Simmons when he was the Butler, and God, my memory's terrible. I can't remember the other guy's name. Hampton Court. That was the name of the team. I do apologise for not remembering the other guy's name. I am so sorry. It was Dane. It was Dane something, but I can't remember. Yeah, we won the tag titles then obviously FWA fizzled out, and then it came back under a little bit of controversy, I guess, because you know they were signing people to deals and everything like that, and it was stuff that I didn't really think was, you know, worth it or viable. But you know, I think it lasted maybe a year.
It was quite short.
About a year, and then it disappeared again. Why it disappeared? I mean, you can point fingers at a lot of people, but you know, it was what it was. It was great for me because it was I came into IPW, which was the place that made me. There's no if, buts, or maybes about that. A lot of people will try and credit FWA, but it wasn't FWA, and I will say that until I'm blue in the face. And Andy Quilden took a chance on me, and obviously at the time Daniel Edler, they took a chance on me, and I had a phone call, and they were like, "Hey, how would you feel wrestling some other Joe?"
Yeah,
I was very, very fortunate enough to have that, and that was the match that put me on the map, and that was when my career took off, and that was 2000. I want to say 2005 was when my it was that match that, you know, okay, that's when everyone started to take notice, because obviously Joe was doing his historic X Division run, and he was undefeated. And at the time, I was the only guy that took him to a time limit draw. So the booking was great. It put me in a really strong position, and you know, me and Joe went back and forth, and you know, Joe, you know, took my hand and carried me, and you know, and just it was a great match. It was a great experience, and that was at the original Orpington Halls, which is when IPW was there. So because of that, I'd come in as a heel, and then you know, on through my IPW title run, I was a heel, but then by the end of it, it was very hard for me to get heated, very hard to get booed because no one wanted to boo me. And then obviously I transitioned to a babyface. So what was fun about FWA? Sorry, excuse me. What was funny about FWA was the fact that I got to be a heel again, and because of some of the, let's just say, some of the political views of the promoter, I decided to, you know, try and do something a little bit like close to home. You know, that's why there was a lot of promos in there, and it's like, you know, you guys prepping your 9 to 5 job, and you know, blah blah blah. So I was just trying to come at the heel from just, you know, looking like I've been enlightened and all that bollocks. But it worked, and it did work. And you know, the way it was set up, you know, I had the first show for the new FWA was against Doug, and that was great. And then obviously it was me and Andy Simmons, and then we did the double switch there where he was a heel, he did a low blow. There was something where it was like he cheated to do something, but then I out cheated him to win, and then turned heel at the end of it, and then began the run. It was very weird and convoluted. It's like, you know, it was what it was. But yeah, so I mean, I think it was only a year, and then I remember because they were the I can't remember what the babyface team was called. We were the agenda. That's why I named it the Resistance, because I'd just seen the reboot of Terminator with Christian Bale. And I loved the fact that they would do the they would send out the messages on the radio, and it was just saying, "We are the resistance, and we need your help."
Yeah.
So I gave that idea, and that was one of the promos Leroy cut, and then it kind of all tied it all in. So yeah, it was fun. Do I think did it do a lot of stuff for people in terms of pushing them forward? I don't think it did. Um, because by that point, most of the guys were already established anyway. So I know they try and take credit and say, "Well, we launched this." No, you didn't. No, you didn't.
Yeah.
But yeah, just again, I was at that point where it was okay, next show, okay, next show, okay, next show, and then it was around that time that then I had my first tryout for WWE, which would have been 2009 in Sheffield, and then it was a pretty big realization, like, oh shit, I've actually got a chance to get signed. And I was like, oh, okay. And, and then I did. I got signed in 2010. I failed the medical because, unbeknownst to me, I had a torn ACL that I've been wrestling on for years. I had no idea. So, they screwed up the contract and threw it away. But then management changed over. And then, thankfully, because of my relationship with Mr. Regal, as soon as I was cleared, he called me up one day and said, "You cleared yet?" And I said, "Yes." So then I went back to Sheffield in 2011, November 2011, and then re-signed the deal and passed all the medical, and then started my first run with FCW in June 2012.
Because I remember in that FWA run, it was kind of this. I think there were even like promos you were throwing out, and people were accusing you in the storyline that you were going to sign for this a big American company and things like that. And then
because I had already got signed, and then
that's
they took
right.
it upon themselves, which I did off my own back. Like the only person I really have to thank for those tryout opportunities is Drew McDonald. No one else got me that, And again, I know there was a lot of muddy waters where FWA was saying, well, because of us, he got looked at. No, that was nothing to do with that. But again, they just work it into the storyline.
Yeah.
So,
because that's what I was always kind of a bit muddied on that because it was like it was one of those things where you were kind of like they were blurring the lines, so to say, because they were using the real life kind of things and then kind of blurring it into that storyline, and then obviously you did sign for that big company. So when because it was FCW, I believe you first went to down in Florida.
Florida Championship Wrestling, yeah.
That's right. I think it's safe to say, and I think it's fair to say that you will agree as well. We've got some clips here. The very first NXT run that you did have wasn't quite what you envisioned it was going to be.
It was the shit.
There you go.
It was the shit.
Because you were used as basically the enhancement talent,
Yes, because
was that sold to you at that time? Is that how it was sold to you originally?
no. So much has been said about him, and I feel that I can say it now. But the head coach at the time, I'm not going to say who, but everyone knows who the head coach at that point in time was a. Can I swear or not?
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, of course. That coach was an absolute fucking prick, and no one fucking liked him. He made wrestling miserable, and I missed all of the times where it was the previous coach was Dr. Tom, and everyone used to tell me some like amazing stories about Dr. Tom. I've only ever met him once, and I would, from his career and everything like that, and then what people were telling me, how he would run the developmental system, it was obviously a lot better. And when the new guy came in, he was just a prick. He was an absolute fucking bully. And for whatever reason, the reason why. So I was in FCW for 4 weeks, and then my ACL retore, because of a stupid drill that he made me do. I said, "Hey, this probably isn't good to do this." No, you're doing it. Retore my ACL. So within 4 weeks, I was back on the shelf again. Um, and just he, I know that infamous letter came out
Yeah.
that everyone, a lot of his people were saying this isn't true, this isn't that. I can say those stories were true because I was in the rehab room. So I was in the rehab room from 8 in the morning until the final class, which was what, 2 in the afternoon most days. And yeah, you know, I know they were true. So the day I got let go, and just for whatever reason, he just he was always like, well, if you're an enhancement guy, you should be privileged to do that, because we shouldn't have to get guys in to do that. And I'm like, okay, so it wasn't, the first run wasn't a good time, and I'm not going to put all the blame on him because I did stop caring. So the day they let me go, I'm not going to lie, when they were in the office and said, "Hey, we got to let you go," I wanted to jump up and down for joy because I fucking hated it. It was the shifts. It wasn't the shifts. It was, it, if there was any sign of, anyone trying to be happy or get along and stuff like that, he just made it a prison-like fucking atmosphere. It was awful. It was absolutely awful. So then, yeah, and it was. I mean, it was what it was. Again, I was at that point when I was like, well, you know what, I'm going to come back home now. I've spent two years in America. It was what it was. The best part about the first run was getting to be under the learning tree of Dusty. The guys at the Performance Center now don't have that privilege. And, Dusty was absolutely fucking amazing. Such a great teacher. The character I was kind of doing at that point in time was based on Bronson, the movie Bronson with Tom Hardy.
Yeah.
And, some of the promos from that were, the promo class was my favorite day by far. And just, the FCW live events weren't what the NXT live events became. It was, I'd left England, and the scene was starting to pick up. You obviously had your 1PWs and stuff like that, and places. The places were filling up, and my first house show I did in Florida, there was 10 people in the crowd.
All right.
Hang on, what the fuck's this? Like, so it wasn't great. It wasn't great at all. It was very, very frustrating because I felt that as soon as I took like 2 steps forward, I'd get the rug pulled out from underneath me. And then there was a one promo day where Bradshaw was there, and out of all the guys that cut promos, it was like our job is to fill a seat, is to put what's the saying? Put an ass every 20 inches, I think is one of the American sayings. And he points at me and he goes, "And that's the only one that I believe today that can do that." After that, I would never allowed to cut a promo in front of the writers again. So, you can, so it's very frustrating, but at the end of the day, I will, there must have been something I was doing that didn't warrant getting pushed. Who knows? But I can't, I can't get through that. So yes, I was let go. Yeah, I was let go. I'm not 2014, I believe. I think. I don't think of the time period plugged up, but the dunnest part about that was getting to get to meet a lot of guys now that I still talk to this day and stuff like that. Became really good friends with Jody Christopherson, Chris Christopherson's son. I was his roommate. Became really good friends with Miro. Was the occasional drinking partner of John Moxley. So so it was good times outside of wrestling, and it was, but again, then to very trepidatious the second time around because I remember standing outside the performance center staring at the door. It took me a good 10, 15 minutes to walk in. I remember just standing there like, I've never known a man take pleasure in making people miserable. And I'm not the only one that said this.
Yeah.
There's a lot of people that have said it. There's a new podcast from a British wrestler that's, starting to kick up steam. And she was there for a while and she was there under him and she's said a lot of stuff. So it's not just me. So I don't want everyone to think I'm just, and as I always say, because it's a complete Matt Bloom, it's a complete 180. So, and I always say this, you can be put in a position of power and you can do good with it, or you can be put in a position of power and abuse that power. Yeah. And the first person abused that power. So that's, that's that.
It was almost like a weird time for you, obviously, because you just left NXT, which was meant to be like the big push, the next stage, say.
Yeah.
And you just moved to the US, and then the UK scene. Obviously, it was starting to rise as say the early 2000s. Then it died down a little bit, and then we had this, what people now call as another boom in the UK. In places like ICW were doing their best, Progress are doing their best. And then you kind of like moved on to America. Was it weird kind of looking back, seeing, and especially if that time was not the best for you, were you ever like looking back at the UK going, oh, I wish I had kind of waited a bit before moving to the US?
Right. It was, so I remember you say, yeah, so I left, I'm trying to think, again, it was a whirlwind. I remember I went to the immigration place in London and she stamped my passport. She stamped my passport on the Thursday with my work visa and then sent the email to the office saying, hey, I've got my work visa. I was on a flight Sunday morning, sorry, and then I started FCW on the Monday. It was, yeah. It's always been literally no time to prep or anything, just last minute. All right, off you go. So I came back in the summer of 2014 and I was doing a few shows and stuff like that. And it was the first time I was wrestling at York Hall since I'd wrestled the Great Muta. And then that was run by RQW and Len Davis, rest his soul, unfortunately passed away a few years ago. He brought an element to British wrestling which hadn't been seen, which was the production standard and the production value and the quality of what a show should look like. And but it wasn't the best advertising, and that was the only thing that I feel that really held him back, because I think I worked the Great Muta and it was a free show, and I think there was still only about 60 people there.
Right.
So that was my last memory of York Hall. So then, of course, I then do the first Summer Sizzler of 2014. It was the first time I've worked at York Hall, and it's grand. Like, it's sold out. And literally, I remember I looked at Andy Quilden, because by that time it had changed over to Revolution Pro. And I just went, what the fuck happened? And he guide laughs and he said, yeah, it goes, a lot's changed. Then that was when I found out about Progress and ICW and everywhere like that. And then just even the smaller shows, small is a very derogatory term. I don't mean that. The lesser known companies, even they were drawing like 200-300 people. And I was just like, shit, this is amazing. Like, what happened? And then just, again, the stars aligned with all of the talent that was at that stage of being on those big shows. You had Marty Scurll, you had Rich Strong Style, you had who else was there? Like Zach Zach had found his stride and was tearing it up every single place he went. you had all the guys from up north, Travis Banks and people like that, so like just the scene exploded. You had a super young Tony Storm, like just the
Yeah.
scene absolutely exploded. And it was an amazing time to be a part of that. So yeah, I mean, it knocked me for six, walking back in, by the time, but I think our match it was a tag match for the Red Pro tag titles. And I think we were on like second or third. And I walked out, and literally, I remember I was teaming with Joel Redman, and I was like, "What?" I couldn't believe it. And obviously, I know COVID killed a lot of wrestling in back home, and I know that there was another company that killed British wrestling as well
Yeah.
um, so to see it picking up again, and seeing the large, I mean, it's very rare to see an empty York Hall with Red Pro now. I don't think
Yeah.
I don't think I've ever seen one. But just to, be looking at some of the other promotions, places like Target and OTT and everywhere like that, and all those types of places where it's it's booming again. So that to me is really really good to see. Um, So I know they've announced another NXT Europe, but I hope they don't. I hope the same thing doesn't happen.
Yeah.
That's all I can say.
So I know a lot of people have different views on it. Like you said, some people think it was the best thing to happen to British wrestling. It shone a light on it. Some people may think it was the death of the indies in British wrestling because we were starting to build this scene, and obviously there was this World of Sport show that was meant to be starting up,
Yeah, yeah,
which kind of crossed over. Um, but at this time, they were starting to do this NXT UK. They'd taken the biggest stars from the UK indie scene. They were going to build this whole brand new promotion from it. But then I think you had been signed just again, but you actually been signed to the American side of it. So I think you had a few kind of crossover matches. You had a match
yeah,
with Pete Dunne. I remember that one specifically.
yeah,
But you were always, I guess, because you live there now, you were based still in that
yeah,
the main NXT, should we say?
yes,
But
yes.
this
That's
time,
yeah,
the second time in NXT, I guess it was a very, very different experience for you than the first time. We also had the amazing win of the NXT tag team titles with Oney Lorcan, who people may remember of Biff Busick as well. We've got some clips here from your time, the second time round. Obviously, a lot different than that first time.
yeah, yeah. A lot different. It was still just as frustrating. I'm not gonna lie.
Mm.
So again, the match that put us on the map, I honestly don't feel we were supposed to get over the way we did.
Right.
I will honestly say, I think it was just, okay, we've got two guys that can work. Um, they can, I mean, because we can, we were that team. You could put us with anyone, and it'd be a good match. There's a funny story about that cricket battle I just did, Carl. We'll get to that in a minute because it's funny. So we did, yeah. So I'd been put on uh, a pay per appearance contract, which was basically a way of kind of locking me in without having to officially lock me in. So I did the UK tournament. Again, that was on like a 2 day notice because they had a lot of people that I guess failed the medicals.
Right.
In England, there were a lot of people that just they didn't for whatever reason. Just they were like, "Yep, no, you can't compete." So then I got an email. I got a text message off Mr. Riedel, and he goes, "Can you talk?" And I said, "Yeah." And I get a phone call 5 minutes later from Canyon Seaman, and he says, "Hey, I was wondering if you can fly to Blackpool in 2 days to be a part of the first UK tournament." And then what was funny about that was at the time I was coming back and forth for Rev Pro.
Yeah.
And I've had a conversation with Andy. It was like, so are you doing the UK tournament? I was like, no, because I'd been a day after the first performance center coach, um, well, quit.
Mm.
Uh, I had a conversation again. I had a conversation with Mr. Eagle, and then he said, "Hey, do you want to come back? Would you like to be an extra?" And I said, "Absolutely," because I was never going to set. You know, if the first performance center coach would have still been there, I never would have gone back. 1000% hand down, I never would have gone back. So yeah, so now I was an extra. I was put in a really good position as an extra because they trusted me. So I was always given someone debut. It was never just, oh, okay, you're going to walk out for 30 seconds and take great hits and then roll out the ring after you've been pinned. I had Apollo Cruz's debut. I had James Storm's debut. I had the re-debut of Sean Spears when he was doing the 10 gimmick.
Yeah.
I was really, really fortunate because I was getting a good amount of time. It'd be like 10 minutes. Each match was about 10. So obviously you take off the entrances and then you allow for like replays and stuff. So I was getting like a good solid 8 minutes of work, which as an extra was kind of, it wasn't really heard of at that time. So I was really, really fortunate there. I was really lucky and fortunate that I was getting some good TV time and stuff like that in between my regular indie stuff that I was doing in the States, so I was starting to get booked more and everything like that. And then it was one of the takeovers where there wasn't a tape in a Full Sail for like, I think it was about 10 weeks. And by that point, I was starting to get itchy feet because I'm just like, you keep bringing me back and no one's got a bad word to say about me. Are we looking at, are you going to rehire me or, is this the best it's going to get? But I couldn't really get a clear answer. Every time I, kind of present the question, it was always, no, you're doing great. You're doing great. And I was like, okay. All I did was in those 10 weeks, I just, went on a ridiculous crash diet and I just got in the best shape I could because I was just like, well, let's do this. This is the only thing I can change. Let's see what happens. And getting in the shape that I did was, I think, basically what pushed them forward to then be like, okay, so they offered me this pay per appearance deal, and that was when I started the 2 matches I had with Oni. And then we did those 2 matches, and then I was on a show back home in England, and I got a phone call from Matt Bloom, and he said, "Hey, what are you doing today?" And I said, "Well, actually, right now I am in England on a show." And he goes, "Ah," he goes, "Well, what are you doing next Saturday?" And I went, "Let me check, but as far as I know, I'm free." And he says, "Right, excellent. I want you to come along to one of our live events because Mr. Eagle and Hunter have had an idea." And this was actually hilarious. So the taping, this is when they used to tape on a Thursday. I think it was a Thursday they used to tape, and we used to take 4 weeks. So then they'd have 4 weeks of TV. And it was the episode where Oni worked Drew, and Oni was just completely caked in blood by the end of it because they beat the fucking living shit out of each other. And I'd had a match with Andrade, and we beat the shit out of each other as well. It wasn't as bloody, but it was just a really good aggressive match. So I remember we're standing there outside, and I'm looking at him, and I was like, "What the fuck did you do?" And he's like, "Oh, Drew headbutted me, or what, just whatever it was." And he's like, "His face looks like a pizza." So me and him are standing around chatting and stuff like that, and then literally at the corner of my eye, I see Regal and Hunter walk out. They look at each other, look at us, look at each other again, and then they walk back in. So I guess that was, oh, maybe we could team these 2. And then, so the following week we did the first match on the Florida live events. And yeah, then after that, they were then like, "Oh, hey, we're going to sign you to this deal. We're going to pay you $500 per show. Um, we can't guarantee you anything." And this is where I really wish they would rehire Canyon Seaman, because Canyon Seaman was so good for NXT because he didn't bullshit you,
Right.
and because a lot of wrestling is, oh, good, great job, yeah, good guy, good guy, good guy. I walk away, geez, this fucking guy, let's fucking get rid of him, like. But with Canyon, he was a straight shooter, and if he said, "Hey, you're shit," you knew he meant it. But then on the flip side, if it was like, "Hey, that was really good," you knew he meant it. So I got on with Canyon really well. And he was honest. He said to me, he said, "Right, we've signed you to the deal. I have no idea where it's going to go." He said, "But it's 6 months long. We'll pay you $500 per show for each live event you do, and we'll give you a pay bump when you're on the TV tapings." He said, "But that's the best we've got."
Mm.
And I was like, "You know what? Great, perfect." And that was actually awesome at that time, because I was getting more TV time and still being able to work the indies, I was very, very busy. And that was when I got the chance to, I was working out of Florida more than I was in Florida. So I got the chance to work in the Northeast for places like Beyond Wrestling, which I think those matches are on YouTube, but those were some of some of my funnest times in wrestling. I'd worked for Chaotic Wrestling and stuff like that, where I was working JT Dunn. It is on YouTube. There's a match Beyond. It was the second time that myself and Zack Sabre Jr. had worked, and and that was an absolute, just it was a great time. Excuse me. And then I got the call ran at the end of the 6 months was up, and I hadn't heard anything. So I was like, "Oh, okay, I guess that's it." So then I'd started putting feelers out to Ring of Honor and at the time Impact, and I was waiting on hearing back on that, and then I randomly get a phone call. "Hey, we're gonna sign you to a deal." And this was at the time of uh, WrestleMania in New Orleans, so it would have been, I think it was the one when Brian won the title,
Oh,
if I remember rightly. I think
30,
that one.
30, I think. Yeah.
Yeah. It was
Mm.
WrestleMania 30. And yeah, so and again, it was like, "This is Hunter's call. He wants to bring you back." And yeah, so then we did that. Uh, but I getting back to the original point, it was an uphill battle. Specifically, I remember, I did all the medicals. I got the green light on the Friday. I started on the Monday, and then on that went, and then on that Monday, that Tuesday, Oni and I were pulled in the office, and it was like, "Hey, we're going to start you with you're going to build up to takeover, and you're going to be taking on undisputed era." So we were like, "Okay, fantastic," And then we had that, this 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 first part was this, and when I'll get on to 205, but these were probably my two favorite times, because literally we started the run, we did the 4 weeks, we shot the 4 weeks, then we did the tour throughout Europe for Download, Brussels, France, and those house shows in Brussels and France were literally my favorite house show experience I've ever had.
Mm.
Especially the last one, because the venue went up like a dome and spiral, and it was so good. And then we did all the shows, like it was somewhere in, and then we flew back to the States, somewhere in Kentucky, then I think it was Alabama, I think, and then we obviously went to Chicago to Takeover. Um, I still won't watch Takeover.
Now
That
I've heard you say this before, and it blows my mind because like to me that it just seems like this amazing performance. You know, so some people may be looking in thinking like that was like the highlight because it's the titles, but obviously for you,
Thank
I
you. I really appreciate that.
I think you can obviously
Here's the reason why.
you may criticize it. I think.
Here's the reason why. I am my own worst critic,
Yeah.
and anything I do when I watch it back, I always go, could have done that better, should have done this better, should have done that, I should have sold this way. I pull it apart and then I just hate what I did. But that night and that match was so special because there's two key things I remember about it. One was when we walked out, we got booed out of the building because I had this argument with the writers so many times, and I would say, UE are baby faces. And they're like, no, they're not, they're heels. I'm like, bullshit. You book them as baby faces. No. I was like, you book them as baby faces. I used to have this argument with them all the time. I remember walking out to that reaction and literally, I forget standing on the road because I looked at Oni and I was just like, oh, mate, we're fucked. Because obviously, we're kicking their ass at the start of it, and then obviously it turns around, and then I'm getting the shit kicked out of me, and just anything we did, they were booing. I did the drop kick out the corner and the nip up, and it was like literally met with "fuck you," and I was like, oh my god. And Chicago is, Chicago is, it's a great wrestling town. It really is. The Chicago fans are absolutely fucking phenomenal. But the one thing I do remember in that, I am going to toot my own horn here. The whole reason for that crowd then turning back was because of how I sold during that heat. And it swayed the crowd to the point where halfway through the heat, they started booing UE. And then we did the hot tag, and then we get into it and everything like that. And then poor Oni gets his fucking face broken in half at the end of it. He ended up after he's got steel plate in his face because of the finish. Yeah.
Oh.
So I remember literally just the bell rang, and for me, and this is where this is why I always make people laugh. For me at that point, usually when you have that type of match on Takeover, you're then, okay, here we go. There's going to be, you'll get subsequent takeovers. You get a title win, you get called up within usually about a year or two. That was literally the formula for how it works. And then I always say, rattled scratch, because, it didn't happen. And here's what. Obviously, I only got hurt anyway. And he was only out for I think he was out for about 8 weeks. It wasn't long. It wasn't a long time he was out for. But we came to the back, and then just that ovation we got from the crowd, I will never forget that. And there's only been 2 times where the reaction you see from me is genuine, where I'm having to stare at the mat because I'm crying because at that point I was like, fucking did it. After everything that happened the first time, and all the bullshit in between and everything like that, and I was just like, I did it. And it was a moment I'll never forget. And that's why I'll never watch that match, because it will take that moment away from me, because I'm going to be like, oh, I should have done this, I should have done that. And, anyway, so we get to the back, and the first person I see is Steve Corino. I'll just run and jump at him. Obviously, I've known Steve for a long time because he was the booker for 1PW when 1PW first opened. On the indies, Steve was my boss, so I spent a lot of time in 1PW. So spent a lot of time with Steve. He was the first person I saw, and I hugged him, and he was over the moon for me. And then literally, I'm not going to say who, but comes up to me and goes, yeah, the War Raiders are the next babyface tag team champions, not you guys, but good job.
All right.
So I knew where it was going after that. Yeah. So that's the only thing that puts a fucking downer on that night, because we were basically told, well, don't get any fucking, don't think
grand ideas.
Basically, don't think this is going anywhere, because it's not. And then obviously, I think it was the next takeover, the War Raiders won the tag titles.
It's weird, isn't
It
it?
is
Like,
what it is.
the wrestling
And
business is like the only business where they won't let things like kind of blossom on their own. You can't
no,
imagine like a record label ever saying, "Oh, this band's selling too much. Actually, we want these to sell more. We'll pull it the other way." It's so counterintuitive.
yep.
It's so strange. It's such a unique thing, I think, to wrestling.
And what's well, again, as I always say, if the hand of God doesn't say it's you, it doesn't matter what
Mm.
happens. And again, this is testament to Oni and I, uh, because we could go in there and work any team, and we were different. Everyone was so extravagant in their ring gear, and we were just like, hey, let's just be Austin. So we just wore black trunks. We put a flag on it so it would differentiate who's who. Um, you know, let's go. Okay, everyone's going to be really flash with their entrance gear. Hey, we're not. We're going to come out just plain track jackets, that flags on it, plain black trunks, plain boots. We went the other way, and that's why we stood out. But our work rate and it, the fans connected with it. The fans loved us. And honestly, until the tag titles, we were booked like shit. And we were booked like shit. We got every other team ready for their tag title run. Um, and it was what it was. And if it, but no matter what happened, the fans were still behind us. And that's why, to a certain extent, I love the tag title run, but I also didn't like it because it changed. Oh shit! I mean, we got told maybe what when COVID first dropped and we started doing all the stuff with no fans at all. We'd been told about 4 different times we were going to win the tag titles, but then they put it on. Then I think it was they they put it on Imperium. Then they put it on Riddle and was it Riddle and Thatcher? Yeah, it was Riddle and Thatcher. Then they put it on Riddle and Pete. Then they put it on someone else, and then put it on Breezango.
Yeah.
Then they put it on us. So we've been told so many different times. So I was at that point. I was like, okay, yeah, I'll believe when I see it. And obviously, before COVID dropped, you had AEW open up, and there was a few times I was very, very tempted to just be like, I want my release.
Mm.
Because we weren't doing anything, and it was a great time. It was a great time, and in that time period, I only had some problems, and uh, with I think I believe it was contractual problems. So he walked for a bit, and he was just like, "I'm done," and he'd asked for his release, and he sat at home for a bit. And then that was when, I was told, well, we got nothing for you on NXT. And I was like, oh, great. Well, I guess I'm fucking getting my marching papers. And then they threw me on 205,
Mm.
basically as an afterthought. And that was the funnest time I had wrestling. It was,
Mm.
because I would fly to SmackDown every week. And obviously, with just, 205 was like the kind of like the redheaded stepchild. It wasn't, no one really cared about it. So it was great from that perspective of the agents were like, all right, cool. You got 12 minutes, you got 10 minutes, you got 15 minutes. Uh, you're over or he's over. Go do whatever you want. So we didn't have constraints. We did, so we just went and did, and again, getting a chance to, learn from Brian Kendrick and, pick his brain and, become friends with him and stuff like that. It was fantastic. I ended up with a great bond with Steve Armstrong because he was producing most of my matches and just, getting to, really like absorb some knowledge and stuff like that. Like a few of my matches were produced by Mike Rotundo, so just guys that have been around for years and years and years and years with all that experience of, all right, well, I guess for again, back in that time period, they'd call it out there. So, it was, getting the chance to really like learn and pick their brains and stuff like that. It was fantastic. And then obviously I only came back. So then we started teaming on 205, and then we had that great series with Davari and and Kendrick, which ended in that street fight, which we got heat for because it took away from SmackDown, and it was just fucking, it was fantastic, it was so good, and it's funny, like everyone's like, yeah, but you were tag champion. It's like that wasn't the funnest time. That wasn't the funnest time at all. I didn't like how they did it because we were originally told we would we would have the match with UE, which we won, which we did, and then we were basically supposed to win the tag titles as baby faces, just so that we could tie it all up and the fans actually got that moment. Like, fuck yes, they did it, and and we could celebrate with them. But then they were like, no, actually, we're going to turn you heel like a week before. Oh no, we're actually going to turn you heel in the match, and then and then you guys are going to be heels. And I thought that should change the fans a little bit. In hindsight, now I look at that and I'm like, you robbed them of that moment because but again, as much as we were heels, they didn't really want to boo us. Like I've still got an inundated inbox from random people around the world. Cannot believe you finally won the tag titles. I'm so happy for you. This is amazing. Um, and it's just, I felt that they kind of took that away from us. And again, all they did was they turned us heel and UE babyface. So we were back to square one. Not that I'm not ungrateful for it because never in my wildest of dreams would I have ever said, "Hey, I'm going to main event a takeover. Hey, I'm going to be in a War Games." Like, you know what I mean? So I'm not ungrateful for it, but I just think you know, they could have paid it off better and just unfortunately getting it, and then I got hurt and then they stripped us of the belts anyway. So it didn't really get its its due service, and then it was kind of downhill from there really. So.
Mate, thank you so much for coming on the podcast today. Like I said, I said a couple of times
Sorry,
during
I've waffled on. And
no,
I've chewed your ear off. I do
no,
apologise.
not at all. No. It's been amazing. It's so good to see you doing so well at the moment. Obviously,
Thank you. I appreciate that.
it's brilliant to see. Because being fans, sometimes, we like you were saying, we don't get to see the redemption type feel to a lot of stories. So to see this it is amazing, and I've been a big fan for a big time, so it's been unbelievable to have you on the show today.
Thank you
Um,
so much, mate. I really appreciate that.
One thing, before you go, obviously you're based in Florida now. I've
Yep.
put a few clips of some of the matches that you managed to have in Rev Pro over the years. Um, you know, is there any chance, do you think, that we will see you, maybe not particularly Rev Pro, maybe somewhere else in the UK in the future?
I would absolutely fucking love to. I would love to be able to come back for Rev Pro. I would love to be able to, I would love to be able to come back and wrestle in England. It's always going to be, it's always going to be my favorite place to work. And, I'm looking at these clips now and I'm just like, damn, I had just, it's home, as much as I've been I've been shit. I've pretty much been here since 2012.
Yeah.
It's not, the scene, the scene in Florida is okay, but it's nothing compared to England. And but I'd say that about any state in the world. It's not. There is nothing like the British fans. So yeah, if I could ever get the chance to come back, if anyone watching this or hearing this can make that happen, I would absolutely love to come back. I really would. Um, so who knows that, at some point I may even move back, that's something I've been, kind of thinking about, but not sure if it can be done or anything like that. So it is kind of just up in the ether, but I would love to come back to British wrestling for sure.
A watch this space kind of moment, I guess.
I hope
Yeah.
so. I really do hope so. I don't know how long I've got left. I really don't. Just through
frustration, through a lot of things. I'm having fun, but there is a part of me that feels that I should be doing more, and I should be in, I should be back on TV. But I guess anyone that was on TV and then now isn't is going to say that. It's not said through being bitter or anything like that. Again, I'll look at it that, hey, it must be something I'm doing wrong. Um, so it's yeah, I would love to come home. I would absolutely love to come home.
Thank you again for the amazing podcast here today. Please stay on the line. We'll do a proper goodbye off camera as well as we
Of
wrap
course, yeah.
we wrap
And
this
just for the
podcast up
record,
today.
I did not. Well, even though my iPad was on 90 and it was plugged in and it still died.
It's
So
no problem at all. There we go, guys. Another amazing podcast on the channel today. That one meant a lot to me because, like I said, and it's not hyperbole, you guys know you've watched enough of these. I always say it like it is. Martin Stone, I'm always going to call it because that's how I knew him first. He's definitely one of the reasons why I got into the British wrestling scene, and he was definitely the figure point of that journey that I had with British wrestling. Because if I hadn't seen that first show and if I hadn't been impressed by that first match, I probably wouldn't have dove deeper into the UK scene. So I'll always be thankful. Guys, we spoke about a lot of stuff on this channel. At the start of the podcast, we obviously talked about different problems that people are going through. So if anybody does ever need a helping hand, please do reach out to people. If it's myself, please feel free to, email in, message down on the channel, anything we can do, we will try and do that for you. But guys, as always, please leave a like and subscribe. We are now up to 3,759. Unbelievable. Uh, thank you. And thank you guys. And hopefully we will see you guys soon. Bye guys.